Warm welcome to the Tuesday edition of Vogan's European Outlook. There is so many things going on at the moment, so let's get right into it. Record-breaking warmth is occurring in some parts of the Northern Hemisphere, and even during the course of yesterday we've seen temperatures not too shabby for the final days of October. These were the temperatures seen by the Met Office at various locations within the UK. You can see here Charterhall 17.1, but 18.7 at Leeming. We had 18.3 at Herden, Murlock 16.4, and Hereford 18.7 Celsius. And it looks as if we are going to continue to see this high pressure dominated pattern, not just this week, but through the next couple of weeks as well. Now, the MJO continues to rotate into the phases that I expect to see change taking place. Now, this is off the GFS model here, showing that we do have, I'll get to the stratosphere in just a second, have I pulled up the wrong chart? Just bear with me a little second, and I'll get to the chart that I'm wanting to show. So we're in phase 6 at the moment, which still is a relatively mild phase. So you can see that we are continuing to rotate. We're in a fairly strong, coming out of phases 5 into phases 6. And what I expect to see over the next 7 to 10 days is a rotation through phases 7, 8 and 1. Now, up until now, those phases have correlated quite nicely with a rise and fall in the Arctic Oscillation and North Atlantic Oscillation. If we look at this graphic here that I made up over the course of the weekend, we were in the null phase back in July, with a phase 3, 4 and 5 of the MJO during the month of August, with a very strong a positive Arctic Oscillation and North Atlantic Oscillation during this month. August produced the hottest weather of the summer for the UK. We've seen very strong negative heights over Greenland, over Iceland, strong positive heights southern UK and across much of Europe, delivering a very hot period during the month of August. But as we came out of phases 3 and 4, during the month of August, we've seen Lillian develop during the latter half of August. We then seen a rotation in the phases 7, 8 and 1. The Arctic Oscillation then went firmly negative, and we did see a couple of shots of Arctic air dropping into the middle latitudes, both over Europe initially, then over North America. Then we went back into the warm phases of 3, 4 and 5. We've seen the response with the Arctic Oscillation going very strongly positive. It's really the abrupt swing between strong positive and strong negative, which is really quite interesting. And as you know, here at the channel, I've been saying that I expect to see the rotation into a strong phase 7, 8 and 1 of the MJO. And you can see here this is a stronger rotation back into the cold phases compared to the previous, which started off during the middle portions of September. We were 15th of September, we were in phase 6. So we're right back to where we were during that midpoint of September. Then we seen the rotation into phases 7, 8 and 1. And the Arctic Oscillation did go into firm negative during the second half of September through the first half of October. We've seen that response taking place. So as expected, we went back into the warm phases. We've seen the positive return, and now there's a reluctance to go into the cold phases. The modelling sees an exceptionally persistent ridge of high pressure, almost bang slap over the UK and Ireland, right the way through to the middle portions of November. So this correlation, this beautiful correlation between MJO and the AO appears to be starting to kind of have a little bit of a problem. There's a wrench in the works, and that wrench in the works is that the persistence of the high that seems to be reluctant to budge from Western Europe. Now, if we look at the ECM extended here, and I want to draw your attention very much to this ridge. This is the UK and Ireland, and almost bang over the UK and Ireland, we've got this strong, well, in fact, the strongest heights anywhere in the Northern Hemisphere over our part of the world at the moment. Now, watch this space as we go through. This is the weeklies, and watch what happens with the 500 millibar pattern as we progress right the way through the next couple of weeks. Now you notice the change. You notice here these Rossby wave breaks extending from the North Pacific across North America and into the Atlantic. But we've got this big stone stuck over the UK and Ireland atmosphere. Play this loop and notice how it just does not want to budge. This is all the way out to the day 17 through the 24. So this is the period between the 14th and the 21st of November. What my hunch is that we will see an eventual shift based on what the MJO is going to do. Now, if it stays put and it just does not budge, I'll be quite surprised if I'm being honest with you. But certainly through the next couple of weeks, it looks as if this anchor within the atmosphere is going to remain in place. Now, that is great news, really, for the UK that has been fed up with seeing rain, low pressure dominance. This is the first dominant high pressure and drier than average pattern that we've seen in many, many months. Probably a good 12 months since the last time we've seen this taking place. So that is good news. And obviously with the ridge over the UK, over Northern Europe, we've got a consequential trough underneath. And I did see one wisecrack remark saying that why am I making a negative out of the rain in Spain? Now, obviously there is good news to see rain in Iberia and other dry parts, typically dry parts of Europe. The problem is you drop 350 millimeters of rainfall within a 5-day period. That is never good news. Flash flooding is never a good thing. And that, I suppose, is what I've been driving home the point. Yes, good news, UK, drying things out, especially across England and Wales. The problem is when you've got a trough trapped underneath a block and high, you then see too much rain too quickly. You see flash flooding as a result, and that is never a good thing. But nonetheless, like I say, interesting to see the changes. We are seeing heights coming up further north within the higher latitudes here as we progress through the second half of the month. Now, what my hunch would be is we're going to see this ridge building northwards here, whether it be even up towards Scandinavia. Nonetheless, we are seeing the changes taking place, but that high over Western Europe is very reluctant to budge, at least over the next couple of weeks here. And as a result, the 850 temperature profile looks like this. Now, this is off the GFS model, and you can see here that we have got that stone within the atmosphere, and essentially the movement of air is around that area of high pressure. So we're going to see lobes of Arctic air getting driven south to the east of the UK. One first glance, Friday the 1st of November here, you can see the Arctic air getting pushed towards the UK, but because of that block, it then gets deflected to the east, drops over Scandinavia and into eastern areas of Europe here. Continue to play through this loop into the early portions of next week. Again, we're in relatively mild air. We could actually see some fairly warm air for early November at 850 millibars. You notice the GFS hinting at 10 Celsius at 850. That is pretty warm for this time of the year now. But you notice here these waves, these lobes of Arctic air getting driven into the far east of the continent. Continuing to play through, you can see here an area of low pressure that appears to be winding up quite deeply to the west of the British Isles here. So again, modelling once you get out towards day 10 becomes quite difficult to kind of buy, and you have to really take it with a pinch of salt. But you get the general idea that this block is going to remain anchored for the foreseeable. Now, this is off the CFSV2. Interesting to see this model here showing the block. Obviously, upcoming 7-day period, there's that negative over southern Spain, northwestern Africa. Then as we move into the following week, again, stuck in place, not really going anywhere. But notice the heights are slowly starting to come up, both from Western North America, western areas of Europe. We're starting to raise the heights over the Arctic, and therefore where the gaps are and the points of weakness are within the atmosphere from the Arctic down towards the mid latitudes, we're going to see the release of Arctic air into this pattern here. Now move on to week 3. This is the 11th through the 18th of November. Notice here that the ridge is now starting to get back to the west over the North Atlantic, extending up into Greenland, and then we've got a lot more stronger heights coming up North Pacific up towards the Arctic region. So you can see here the CFSV2 is hinting at this phase 7, 8 and 1 of the MJO here. Like we've seen during the second half of September, early portions of October, the pattern is starting to kind of go to what I would expect to see taking place. That would be a more negative, both in the Arctic Oscillation and the North Atlantic Oscillation. So this is going all the way out to the 11th through the 18th of November. Like I said at the back half of last week, I think it was actually in the brief video that I put out on Saturday night before the Tropical Outlook, saying that it's very, very easy to rush a pattern and jump quick on a cold theme. And I think you have to look at the big picture. You have to appreciate the fact that the MJO is still in a relatively mild phase at the moment. It's not yet went into the cold phases. We know it's going to go into an amplified phase 7, 8, 1, but we need to allow the time for the atmosphere to respond, that heat release up into the Arctic region. And certainly we will wait and see what happens. This may not happen. We have to appreciate that as well. It may not happen. There's no, given right that just because we see one teleconnection doing one thing, that it has to actually happen. There is other aspects to take into consideration as well. But nonetheless, you notice here by the time we reach the back half of November, we're starting to see the heights coming up down into the mid latitudes once again. This may be the atmosphere going back into the warmer phases of 3, 4, and 5. And I would expect that to happen. Look at this here, November 25th through the 2nd of December. I would fully appreciate this outcome if you would fully expect to see that the MJ would rotate back from the Pacific into the Atlantic. Those are promotional of negative Arctic oscillations, negative North Atlantic oscillations. That being said, however, it's going to continue rotating back into the Indian Ocean and then eventually into the maritime continent. So you would expect to see this pattern returning once again. Negative heights over top of positive heights within the mid latitudes. So we will wait and see what happens here. Anyway, let's have a look at the stratosphere. And it looks as if we are going to go from fairly strong. In fact, according to this here, it looks as if we're going towards record strong mean zonal winds. What's the mean zonal winds? The stronger the winds are surrounding the polar vortex, the more of a westerly flow you would expect to see in the troposphere underneath here. Once the winds start to kind of ease in intensity, we then start to see the response to stronger heights within the troposphere over the Arctic. You would then create more friction up into the stratosphere. That would then consequently slow down those zonal mean winds surrounding the polar vortex. And you can see here that the ECM is indicating it ramping up, it's strengthening. That would probably be in response to the pattern that we've got going at the moment, which is low heights within the Arctic. We've got strong heights within the mid-latitude pattern. Therefore, we've got no resistance within the stratosphere. You would expect to see the Arctic oscillation with it being strongly positive, allowing the stratospheric polar vortex to strengthen. But then notice here that the ECM indicates a return back towards average. Now, is that the model seeing the build-up of pressure within the Arctic region causing that return of friction within the stratospheric circulation? That's what I would expect to be the case, that it's seeing the pressure rising within the Arctic as we move towards the middle portions of November. Look at this here. It goes from record strong back towards the average. So it's not going weaker than average, but it's going from strong to then back to average. That is the model telling me that it's seeing some sort of a resistance returning to the 10 millibar level, and then it strengthens. Notice that here as we move towards the end of November into early December. The modeling is indicating that it goes stronger than average. That, to me, is the MJO returning back to warm phases. We see the change in the Arctic atmosphere, and we go back to essentially what we've got at this moment in time. Looking at the ECMWF, at the moment we've got some relatively warmer than average temperatures at 10 millibars over the North Atlantic at the moment, which is quite interesting. Then notice here we'll play through into week 2, so this is the 4th through the 11th. It's actually starting to see a cooling taking place at 10 millibars. Then you notice here by the time we reach the 11th through the 18th of November, we're starting to see warming taking place over northern North America. Then continuing to play through 18th through the 25th, we're going back to this warm anomaly over the North Atlantic at the 10 millibar level. So nothing is clear cut. And I think it's very, very easy. This is the time of the year where you get a lot of trolling, a lot of people just kind of waiting for things to not necessarily work out as you expect, and then to jump on the bandwagon of hype, hyping things up, or saying this thing or saying that thing, and just waiting for things to go wrong, and then people can jump on it. I think it's very easy to bite back, I suppose, and also to possibly throw in the towel down idea a little bit too quickly. And I suppose I need to be mindful of the fact that, yeah, just patience is a virtue. The pattern has played out quite nicely so far, based on the MJO and the AO connection. Null phase, MJO phase 3 and 4, 5, positive. Phase 7, 8 and 1, negative. Return to 3, 4 and 5, positive. So what's the reason why we wouldn't go back to phases 7, 8 and 1 and more negative within the Arctic Oscillation, North Atlantic Oscillation? Certainly the CFSV2 is suggesting week 2 into week 3. Let's go back to it. You can see the pattern evolving as you would expect. This is week 2, week 3. Notice here the shift of the high west and north from the UK here, troughing this, starting to develop over a good chunk of Europe as well. So we'll wait and see what happens. This is certainly an interesting test coming up. Now, in terms of the 50 millibar level, we know that the polar vortex within the upper stratosphere is one thing, but if you look at underneath that, at 50 millibars, there is a different story to speak about here. So if I can find the right chart once again, I want to show you this here real quick, and then we'll end with this. So let's go here, click on here, and I want to show you this here. So this is the lower portion of the stratosphere, not the top, but the lower portion. And I want to show you how there's quite a lot of blocking seen by the model here. This is the initial, and notice here it's indicating high pressure over the Baffin Straits. We've got a fair amount of blocking on the Eurasia side of the pole, the North America, and particularly towards Greenland here. We have got the model indicating blocking within the 50 millibar level. Let's skip out to a week from now, and you can see here that we still have that block, but notice here that the blues are starting to show up over the Eurasia side of the pole. That may be an indicator of change, but that is later down the road. That is towards the second half of the month of November here. So the initial could be the next 2 to 3 weeks. So go back to it, 50 millibars, model seeing the region returning. Then by the time we skip all the way out to 10 days from now, it's indicating that we are starting to see lowering of heights within the Arctic. Therefore, I think the model is maybe already seeing the return to a more phase, 3, 4, and 5 of the MJO towards the early portions of December. But this is a complex system, folks. I'm interpreting what I'm seeing and then trying to put it out there for you to hopefully understand what I'm trying to say. But this doesn't necessarily mean anything with regards to the winter. The fact that the stratospheric zonal winds are likely to increase towards the second half of September, the second half of November, may indicate that we have a fairly positive AO, NAO into the month of December. So again, it's how you interpret it, and the interpretation may be correct, but it may not be correct as well, and that has to be taken into account. But let's watch this space as we go forward. And yeah, I'll be back again tomorrow. Like and subscribe. See you next time. Bye bye.